Today, I'm coming from the perspective of a book that the Lord told me to write called Sell Like Jesus. Subtitle: Seven Characteristics of Christ for Ethical Sales. So I basically looked at the life of Jesus and what he did to build relationships that has lasted, the effect of which has lasted for over 2,000 years. There isn't any better success to emulate than Jesus Christ. So when I approach sales, I am applying the law of love. And I don't know if you've heard the comparison of love and fear are actually opposites. Not love and hate, but fear is the opposite of love, and perfect love casts out all fear. So, love is the base from which I'm going to be speaking about sales. So, I wanted to share a little bit about me. You'll notice I have three names: Deb, Brown, Marr. I was married to Bill Brown for 25 years. He died suddenly, so he's with Jesus. And then the Lord gave me another awesome man of God, Charles Marr, to partner with in life and in ministry. So when I'm not working, Charles and I are doing inner healing prayer ministry, deliverance ministry, trauma and um, PTSD ministry, and satanic ritual abuse ministry. So suffice it to say, we work with those who have really experienced deep levels of trauma for a variety of reasons. Those of you who work in human trafficking, you've seen um, what the enemy can do to a soul. So it's my privilege and honor to work side by side with Charles to help bring healing to those who are hurting. I live in central Pennsylvania, so Cumberland County, that arrow is pointing to, where we have one furry baby, Queen Sheba Haley. And when I'm not doing sales or painting, I'm gardening. I love growing organic vegetables. So, Laura, yay, 150 acres. I don't know what I would do. I have four little raised beds, and yeah, that's all I can handle. So, I mentioned painting. I paint prophetically. So, I paint during worship at church or at special events. Um, and you can see the different styles. I paint what the Lord shows me in the spirit for whatever the occasion is. Um, it's it's a creative process that just brings me so much joy. I can hardly put words to it. So that's a little bit about me. So, how did I get to this place of writing a book called Sell Like Jesus? Some people have the reaction like this little guy. That's why I love this picture. It's like, what? What do you mean? Jesus didn't sell anything. Okay, all right. So maybe money didn't exchange hands, but let's face it. Um, Jesus asks us to pay a price. He gives his life freely, yet we must accept the gift. And in order to accept the gift, there are some things we have to give up, and they all center around self. I cannot hold on to myself and have Jesus. I must give myself, my selfish desires, myself, my desire to control. It's a price that I pay every day, sometimes moment by moment, when I need to make the decision to say yes to Jesus and no to my way. So there is a cost to be paid. Now, Daniel Pink has written a book called To Sell is Human. Many of you may have read it or may be familiar with it. In that book, Daniel says that even though only 1 out of 9 people make their living in some kind of sales capacity, everyone is actually in sales. So I've listed some of the, first, a definition of sales. So if we look at sales as the fair exchange of goods or services or ideas for an agreed upon compensation. That definition allows us to broaden the whole concept of what it is that we might have to sell. And I'm putting it in air quotes because we'll talk more about the difference between the positive side and the negative side that some of you shared. So some of the things that we sell include products, services, ideas, or concepts. Getting buy-in for cooperation, for teamwork, evangelism and missions who are spreading the word about Christ, and fundraising to do the work of the kingdom, where you have to ask people to actually contribute money in order to support ministry work. We need to, when we sell, we have to be very clear about who our target audience is and what our approach is going to be. And I love this scripture. Now remember, this is Jesus speaking. Remember, it is I who sends you out, even though you feel vulnerable as lambs going into a pack of wolves. So be shrewd as snakes, yet as harmless as doves. That's from the Passion Translation. And other translations say, be wise as serpents, yet harmless as doves. I don't know about you, but when I first came across that scripture, it made me scratch my head like, wait a minute, you're telling us to be wise as a serpent? Wasn't it the serpent that tested Eve in the garden? What's that all about? Then I saw this translation, to be shrewd as snakes, yet harmless as doves. And here is the definition of shrewd: smart, perceptive, sharp, insightful, and discerning. And harmless, innocent, inoffensive, and not hurtful. These are the qualities of an excellent salesperson. We need both. We need both sides, and we need them in balance. So let me break right there and ask for comments on that. Any comments, questions, observations? How are, yeah, I can't speak. How are we doing is what I want to say.
I love this scripture you shared, and at times you could look at, be shrewd as snakes could seem harmful.
Right.
But when you take that definition, that really gives clarity to who we are as as a salesperson, or just to be smart, perceptive, sharp, those that's good. Those are good things, good qualities.
Yes, yes, Ellis, right on. Because we're using our discernment as we listen to people's stories, as we listen to what the problems are,
Yeah.
to evaluate whether we have the right solution. Anyone else? Okay, I will keep going. So, the problem with sales really boils down to, and I think Mala stated the phrase that I've heard way too many times, that sales is a necessary evil. Oh, it's necessary because you can't be in business unless you make sales. Let's face it. But is it evil? Sales itself is not. It's how it is done that can be done in the spirit of evil or in the spirit of God. So, manipulation and the love of money are what taint the sales process. And take it to the next level. These are spiritual strongholds of witchcraft, control, and unrighteous mammon, which is the spirit of avarice and greed. It's not money that's evil, it's the love of money that's evil and brings all sorts of trouble. If you love money, then you have made money an idol and you've put that idol before God, and that is sin in His eyes. So it's these spiritual strongholds that we who are Christians who sell, we need to be aware that this is what is happening that is causing us discomfort when we're on the wrong end of a bad salesperson. And it's what we have to make sure we don't cross the line to become as we sell. Because here's what I've seen: most people who have to sell are the people that I love working with are small business owners, solo entrepreneurs who have to sell, but it's not their thing. It's not why they got into business. They didn't go into business because they love selling. They went into business because they have a passion for their craft, for their skill. They're good at it and they want to share it with the world. And then, oh my gosh, I have to sell in order to get it in the hands of the people who can actually use it. So sales becomes an afterthought. And without training, whether we um, are aware of it or not, we automatically start doing what has been done to us, which means we end up speaking in ways that pressure people when we don't really have to. It's for lack of knowledge that God's people perish. If you don't have another alternative that you've learned, practiced, and make your own that allows you to communicate in godly ways, then it's going to be very easy to fall into the trap of selling the way the world sells. And all it takes is one phrase, and you'll break trust just that quickly. You can be doing really well until the point where you say, so, can I get that ready for you today? Before you've fully qualified and made sure that the person is ready to move forward. That breaks the trust. And once you break trust in a sales call, it's almost impossible to get it back. So, in the world, without us taking control of the sales process in order to shift the atmosphere to a godly way of interacting. What we have is the traditional buyer seller conflict, where buyers are afraid of being taken, sellers are afraid they won't make the sale because they need the money, and both are feeling vulnerable and defensive. Now, if you're not in a traditional sales role, this dynamic also takes place in, it could take place in any type of conversation where you seem to be on two different sides. On the one hand, I say I'm right, and you say you're right. And we're both right from our own perspective. But if we don't seek to understand and find that place of middle ground, then we will end up both feeling defensive and frustrated because I know I'm right. I've got the facts to prove it. And guess what? That's exactly what you're saying too. We can't ever win at that game. The only hope is to change the dynamic with love. I started by saying love is the foundation for godly sales. So these two scriptures, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself, as you yourself are loved. And then the golden rule from Matthew 7:12. In everything you do, be careful to treat others the same way you'd want them to treat you. For that's the essence of all the teachings of the law and the prophets. So, with those foundational scriptures, then how do we demonstrate love in a sales conversation? We need a little more info before we can answer that question. So, in order to move from fear-based sales to love-based sales, our behavior has to change. We want to be able to express our faith through our actions. So how will we do that? How can we live our values as we're making cold calls, warm calls, different types of sales interactions? And how can you cultivate trust with total strangers, customers, referral sources, employees, donors, family members, friends, anybody for that matter? What I did was take 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, and I paraphrased it. So, how do we put love into action? This is what the Bible says love looks like. It's patient, gentle, and kind. It's never jealous. It doesn't brag or inflate its own importance. It doesn't shame or disrespect others. It doesn't selfishly seek its own honor. Love is not easily irritated or quick to take offense. It joyfully celebrates honesty and finds no delight in what's wrong. Love is a safe place of shelter. Love never stops believing the best for others, and love never gives up. So, Bill, can I upload a document to for people to download and look at? Can I do that in?
I don't know, Chris might be the better person
Yeah,
for it.
you should just be able to, on the chat, click on file, and then
Okay.
your computer or however it looks, and just select the file.
What I'm going to do is share a worksheet so everybody can follow along. And the worksheet has those scriptures, and then it has a cheat sheet with some answers on page 2. So please don't look at page 2 until because I want you to stretch your brain and try to think of things before I give you the answer. It's basically an answer key. It's certainly not all the answers, but it will give you some tangibles to take the mystery out of what we're talking about. So give me a couple of seconds. Bill, if you
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Yeah, you do that, and Chris, help her if you can. You know, while she's doing that, as you're kind of thinking through what Deb has just processed, please write in the chat any questions that you have for Deb, so that so we don't forget them. And we may even, if we don't get time today to answer them, maybe Deb can answer them. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, Deb.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But yeah, because this is there's so many questions that come up in this, and we may end up having to do this again with Deb in another day, because we're entering into a season where the challenge, one, just presenting the gospel is going to be very unique, I'll just say. And doing that is one thing, but just being able to sell your product holistically. And when I say holistically, it's with authenticity and so forth. And I'm just coming at my age, believe it or not, being able to, as some people say, live out loud. In other words, I know that in my heart, I don't want to be offensive to people, but I've often been too politically correct, where I didn't share all that who I was and the blessings that I really am, the really gold inside of me. And so I just want to encourage you today that this may be part of your wake-up call to learn to live out loud. And there's different components to that, and how that, and Deb's going to share some of that, and I might interact towards the end on some of my questions too, Deb. But anyway, put your questions in the chat, and then the chat is recorded, so we'll be able to capture those. So you ready to go, Deb?
I did it.
Okay, all right.
See it in the chat? It says Thrive Worksheet, January 2021.
Yep. You just click on it and save it to your desktop, and then you can open it from there.
Thanks, Chris. The reason I created this exercise.
It's not there, Deb.
It's not there?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, I see it. Oh, you know what? You sent it just to me, Deb, not everybody.
Yeah, make sure that you're sent to everyone.
I thought I did.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Thanks for that clarification.
It had initially said everyone. Oh, that's because you sent me a message in between. Got it. All right, I'm doing it again.
Well, while she's doing that, Deb, you'll be proud to know I had a sales call today. And I'll tell you, in terms of what you just said, how it went. So she reached out to me, and I thought it was one thing. It turned out to be another. But we were connecting, and we really got along, and everything was great. And then she said to me, well, how much does it cost? And, I gave her the price, and I said, listen, you're free to say no, because I'm okay with that. This conversation is simply a divine appointment. She is a believer, and it's either going to be a yes or no, and that's okay. And we can work out a payment plan if we need to. And so I let it alone. And she's like, well, I don't know if I can afford it. I'm not sure I have it. And I said, well, is your husband supporting this? Because, he's in the picture. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't you ask your husband if he'll invest in you? Because he's got a business, and it's a professional, it's a tax write-off. And
that's great.
So anyway, so she's going to go back. She's going to pray about it. But it was a really good call, and I laid the foundation, and she was totally cool, and neither one of us felt obligated. So it was really great.
So Chris, how was that different from how you might have done it in the past?
I think I've been doing it that way for a while, mostly because God has gotten me on a, hey, I'm in charge rather than you need money type experience for the past couple of years. But I would say previous to my spiritual growth journey, I was always concerned about the money, and I walked in with a lot of angst, like, gee, I really need this sale. And I was never pushy, but inside I wasn't at peace. Now I come to these conversations completely at peace and free of the outcome. And even it doesn't matter if it works or not. it works better for me now, regardless of whether or not I get the sale.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Did everyone get it now? Good.
Thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
Rock and roll, girl.
Okay. So, Bill, how much time do I have?
We'll give you, let's say, 14 more minutes.
Okay.
How's that sound?
All right. Give me a 2-minute warning, please.
Okay, will do.
Okay. So, the reason I created this exercise is because the hardest thing for us human beings is to put what we know in our head into action. So I venture to say everything that I've shared so far makes sense to you. It rings true. And let me ask, is there anything that didn't sound right that you have a question about? I want to make sure. It's okay, because if you're thinking it, someone else might be too. Okay. So it made sense, yet doing it, how to put it into action, is often where we choke on being able to use the knowledge that we have. So what we're going to do is pick 2 or 3, however many we have time for, and work through how these attributes of love actually show up in the sales conversation. So when you look at the list of 10, does somebody have one that you want to hear what it would sound like in a sales call?
Of course we would.
Pick one. Pick one you want me to start with.
Number 9.
Number 9, love never stops believing the best for others. Okay, so what conceptually, what is that about? Anybody? Love never stops believing the best for others. What does that mean?
Well, the reason they're coming to you is because they have a lack or an issue, and you see the best version of what could happen, and you're the provider to help them get there.
Okay, good perspective. Someone else have another perspective on that?
Having their best interest in mind, Deb.
Keep their best interest in mind. Good. Yes. Bill, you want to say that?
Say that. With their best interest in mind?
So sorry, you put something in the chat. I thought that was.
No. I'm just, as thoughts come to me, I'm just writing them in there. And
Okay.
it's also a prompter for other people to do it too. Sorry.
Okay, got it. Thanks. All right, so keeping the best in mind for the other person. During the sales call, we have the introduction, we have the exploratory conversation where we're learning about them and trying to understand their needs and wants and desires. And then we have the close, and then we have the delivery. So in any one of those stages, how could you demonstrate with your words that you have the person's best interest in mind?
Maybe it would just be that you are stating back to them that you've heard their need, that
Good.
that you're not just providing a close, but that you truly heard, and you're weaving their story, and you're showing them before they can see it themselves that you believe in the value of what you're bringing, and helping paint the picture for them that whatever it is that you're providing will indeed
Yes.
solve their problem in the way to emotionally, I guess, get inside. I'm lost with words, but
No, you're
intrinsically motivate them, I guess, would be for them. You're painting the picture to see. So repeating their need or their want or the pain is helping them validate the solution.
So wrapped in all that you said, Laura, is first listening and showing that you've listened by repeating back what it is you heard and verifying it, making sure that you've understood the problem as they've presented it, and maybe even going the next step and asking another question to clarify and make sure you have the whole picture. Then another piece of what you said was presenting the solution according to their language, the description they just gave you. And here's something, you probably want to write this down. No one can convince anyone of anything. I can't convince you of something. The only person who can convince me to change my mind is me. And what do I have to have? What do you have to have before you will change your mind about something? That's a question. I want an answer. What do you have to have in order to change your mind about something?
Information.
Information, data.
Revelation,
Say again, Rochelle.
revelation or conviction.
Conviction, facts, information, which could come through revelation. Okay. Until we have that information and revelation, we're going to stick to our guns. So, in the high pressure world of sales, sales is a convincing process. Well, right there, we are doomed to failure because no one can convince anybody of anything. And when you start trying, let me show you a way. If I can prove it to you, let me do the math for you. No, you're wrong. This is what it says here. I mean, these are the kinds of things we hear in the guise of, I'm just trying to help you, stupid. We don't say the stupid part, but that's what everybody feels. Because convincing is pushing, it is disrespecting my perspective. And that is never going to win friends and build relationships. So convincing, we got to get that word out of our vocabulary. I can't convince you of anything. What I can do, here's what we replace it with, is help you discover for yourself if this is something that's good for you or not. And if it's not, that's okay. So together, we are going to ask and answer questions. And together, we'll decide if it makes sense to take the next step. We'll see how good a fit there is. And we'll map out what to do together. This is the language of partnership, the language of creating a win-win where both parties are satisfied. The fair exchange of goods, services, ideas for an agreed upon compensation. I don't mind paying the money when I feel it's worth it. I just may not know how worth it is to me until we have that discussion. And that's what we do as excellent sales professionals. We ask questions to help people discover for themselves what's really important and how bad their situation is, how bad it hurts, and what they're willing to do about it. Because I'll put this out there. The fear of change stops more sales than the lack of budget. People are afraid of change. People are risk averse. So during the sales conversation, one of the ways that you can show that you believe the best for others is by raising the question of the pain of change and having that discussion before they commit to the purchase. Because if you don't do it before they purchase, it'll come after they purchase, and that's where you get backouts. That's where you get people disappointed. That's where you get the call at midnight on your voicemail, cancel that order. Or make that a one-time donation, not a monthly. Questions, thoughts? I can see gears turning.
Well, Deb, I do have a question. So inevitably, I've seen that pattern. You know, I have people that can ultimately afford what I charge, hands down, but the answer is no, because it's the fear. And I have others who can't afford it, but they will sell everything they have to do it because they're just ready. But what are some questions that you might give us today that shows that posture of love? And when you said it's good to bring those questions up in advance before you even talk about cost. So could you share with us some loving questions that helps them during that process?
So specific questions will be a challenge for me because everybody's selling situation is different. So I can tell you conceptually what it is that to help you formulate the question, the concept that you want to include is ultimately, I want this to be a good decision for you. I want to help you make the best possible decision. So that is what I call a softening statement. When we get into teaching technique, which for me, we deal with mindset and structure long before we talk about any kind of technique. But I'm going to identify it for what it is. When you construct your questions, you need to put softening statements in front of them, or else you'll sound like an interrogator. So the softening questions are the statements that show that you've been listening, or that project your thought in front of your question so that the person knows where you're coming from before you actually ask it. So I would preface a budget decision kind of question by saying, I want to help you make the best decision possible. So let me ask you. And then I would fill in with the question that I need to ask. So your diagnostic questioning pattern is always going to be listen. I love when Jesus was 12 years old in the temple. It's in Luke. It might be Luke 2. I forget. It says he was in the temple with the scribes. The scripture says he was listening and asking questions. Not asking questions and listening. That like blew up on the page of the Bible one day for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he didn't go in and ask a bunch of things or start talking. He went in and he sat and listened. And after he had listened, then he knew what to ask and how to ask it to get his point across, or to learn what he wanted to learn, or to teach what he wanted to teach, even at 12. So first, here's the structure of your diagnostics. Listen and take the key words from what someone has said to formulate your question. Ask the question, listen, use a softening statement, then ask your question, and rinse and repeat. So listen to the answer, pull out the keywords, use a softening statement, acknowledge, repeat, clarify, and then ask your next question, listening for keywords. And what that does is it allows you to drill down on a subject from a mile wide to an inch versus staying at the 1 inch deep, mile wide, 20 questions, never really getting to the root. How am I doing for time, Bill?
Yeah, good. I was going to let you get to that point. You're perfect. If we can close it here.